the program. It's time to dig into the conversations, greeting front pages and making the rounds in the news this morning. I won't be doing this alone. I also extend an invitation to you to lend your thoughts to the issues in the news. But to start the conversation in our studios, I'm now joined by a news and current affairs analyst, Mr. Daniel Ochefu. Good morning to you, sir.
Thank you for having me again.
Well, I don't know what you made of the news yesterday, but for those who followed the plenary session live, it got rowdy to some points where we saw Senator Alin Dume and his colleague, Senator Abdul Ningi, trying to stage a walkout when the Senate deviated from its business of the day to give audience to the Tax Reform Committee. At that point, did you see any sense in the proposed walkout that they were looking to stage?
Well, I think what actually happened yesterday was a particular senator had to invoke Order 38.
38, yes.
Of the rule, of the Senate rule, and then he was actually correct to have done that, because it was not part of bringing the tax people in there yesterday, was not part of their original business of the day. So that was exactly what happened yesterday. And then, so it wasn't as if it was a predetermined ploy to work out. But if you look at it from the both sides, you realize that Senator Ningi and Ndume also were correct in their own right, because invoking Rule 38 of the Senate rule was actually very necessary at that particular point in time. Whenever the Senate is in session, you don't allow people to come in, people who are not part of the Senate, who are not part of plenary, who are not legislators, to come in for the business of the day if they are not invited. And that was what exactly happened yesterday. Even though they tried to say that the other party was trying to say that it was necessary because of the sensitivity of the tax reform bill.
They tagged it an issue of national interest. That's the words that the Deputy Senate President used when he was vetting on the issue, the concerns raised on the floor. Is this so much of an issue of national interest? Because we're seeing northern governors and northern elders in some states raising an alarm over the tax bill. Does this make it an issue of national interest?
It's a very critical issue, if you ask me, because it's more like the spine of this government, fiscal policy. And that was how come that the fiscal policy, the tax reform, fiscal policy committee and tax reform, headed by Taiwo, came about. Because it's actually the spine of this government in terms of wanting to get resources, wanting to raise money to fund their policy. So if you look at it from that angle, you will look at it as an issue of national priority for them. And not just for them, for the entire country. Because, of course, it's been raising issues here and there across board within the northern governors, within the National Assembly, it's been raising a lot of issues. So we can't just brush it aside. But how they brought it into the Senate yesterday without following the due process of inviting them. Of course, you have the Senate committee.
There's also supposed to be prior notice given to the
prior notice in the order paper for the business of the day. It's actually supposed to be there in the other paper for the business of the day. It wasn't there. So that was the grouse from Senator Abdul Ningi and then I think the other senator, Ndume also. So it should have followed, no matter how sensitive it is or an issue is, no matter how sensitive or how of a national importance an issue is, you can't bend the rule of the House.
Because the House is formed on the laws.
Because the House is formed on the laws and operate within the ambit of the law. So you can't just throw aside the rule of the House and then bring anybody in, unplanned against the business of the House for the day. That is why you have the order paper, you have the notice paper, and then you have the order paper in plenary. So the notice paper, it just gives an overview of what could possibly come up. But the order paper specifically, that's why the order paper comes out exactly the same morning of the plenary. It comes out every morning of the plenary. That's why it comes out at that particular time, so much so that the House Committee, the Senate Committee on Ethics, on Rules and Business would have be so sure that these are the business of the day. So if a particular issue or agenda is not listed in that order for that day, I see no reason why they should just bring them in the name of, under the toga of its national interest, issue of national interest and paramount interest at that particular point in time. So I go with the fact that I don't support what the other parties did by wanting to make it an issue of the House. Of course, the other people said the other business for the day was exhausted already, so they just brought them in. And then, of course, you have people like Senator Undume, who come across to a lot of people as a very controversial senator.
He's had his issues in the House, and following probable suspensions and aggrieved notions that he is not in line with the renewed hope agenda, he is back in the House again. But he seems to be someone who says his mind without fear of favor.
Exactly. We have a couple of them like that there. We have people like Senator, this man from Abia State, can't remember his name now, the former minority leader or something, the slim man. And then we have Abdul Ningi, we have Senator Ndume, a couple of them like that bear their
likes of Senator Adams Oshomole as well.
Adams Oshomole.
Who wear their emotions on their sleeve.
Exactly. So such people will always bear their minds regardless of whose ox is God. So it's not surprising hearing that from Senator Undume, and then he was so passionate about his stand yesterday. When I watched it, I realized that he was so passionate about his stand yesterday. He agreed that it was an issue of paramount national interest, no doubt, but then follow the due process. And then let what is supposed to be done as the business of the day for that day.
Well, we might have some of those visuals in the course of our conversation, but it's important to note that whilst the Senate session was rowdy, having doused the tension, one of the reasons why the committee was in the House was to highlight the fact that the presidency is also looking at making some tax exclusions for vulnerable citizens. And now particularly within the brackets of workers who earn below an annual target of 1 million naira. Now, and I don't know how much of a significance this is, because when you look at the tax reform bills, beyond income tax, there's VAT and others.
Yeah.
But for those under income tax, how significant is it that those earning below 1 million naira would be exempted from income tax?
Well, it's the entire tax bill. Of course, there are 4 sections of the tax of the bill, and then or 4 dimensions to the bill. The reason why the issue of less than 1 million naira earners being exempted from the income tax is because of the national minimum wage, threshold of 17,000 naira. By the time you multiply, assumably, by the time you multiply 70,000 by, say 12 months, it should give you less than a million naira or so. So their target for exempting or excluding that category of people is because of the national minimum wage threshold. But how that will affect the overall, because the objective, like I said, the objective of the Presidential Committee on Tax Reform and Tax Reform Committee headed by Taiwo, their objective basically is to impact on the tax to GDP ratio of the country in the next 3 to 4 years, or 2 to 3 years. Because currently we're doing about 12 to 14% tax to GDP ratio, and they want to have something in the region of 18% by 2026. That is one of their major objectives. So if you look at it that way, the entire bill came from them, emanated from them, of course. It came from them just to be able to see how taxes can be efficiently collected, the tax net can be widened, so that you have more people paying the taxes. And then this issue of having to pay taxes, multiple taxation, taken care of from the corporate world, because that has been a major problem for them over there. So if you look at it from that angle, you will realize that if you have more people in the long run in the lower run of the ladder being exempted from paying tax, paying personal income tax, those people based on the national minimum wage, if you have most of them exempted, because you have a lot of them in that cadre, most of them exempted, you will realize that it's counterproductive, kind of,
towards the original target.
Towards the original target and the idea of bringing more people in the tax net. So because the challenge we have for taxation in Nigeria is, number one, the fact that the people don't trust the government enough to want to pay their taxes because they don't see what the government is doing with their taxes. And then number two, the case of multiple taxations and all that, and then the inefficiencies in the system. So the bill has come to take care of a whole lot of things. That's why, personally, I don't believe that the bill should be thrown out. I don't believe that it should be thrown out entirely, because there are a whole lot of goodies around that bill. A whole lot of goodies around the bill. But actually, you can't throw the baby away with the bathwater. And then, because at the end of the day, you will realize that what most of these governors, northern governors, and some of the senators and the National Assembly members are against is Section 77, and then I think Section 146 or so of that bill, of the Nigerian tax bill and the Nigerian tax administration bill. The areas that talk about how to administer or how to share.
The equity in sharing.
The equity in sharing, that talks about, I think, Section 77 or so. And then the other areas where you are going to increase, you are proposing to increase VAT consecutively from now till, I think, 2030 or so. Now we currently have 7.5%, and you want to take it to 10% by 2026. And on like that until 2030, you have 15% or so, if I'm correct. So those are the areas that they don't like.
Now, one of the strong arguments in those areas, whilst they insist in equity in sharing, is that in some northern states where Sharia law is operational, there is a ban on alcoholic beverages. There's also a ban on sports betting.
Obviously.
And with all these bans on these issues where you could have consumable tax to add into the tax net, do such states qualify for equity in sharing from other states where these laws are non-operational?
Well, I think that actually is the ground for their grouse, because currently what is obtainable is that you have a situation where where these things are produced from earn from it. Lagos, Port Harcourt, and all these areas that are highly industrialized. Now, wanting to bring it to this current situation as proposed by this law, of course, if you look at it that way, the feel have done by that arrangement. But then, I want us to dispassionately look at this thing in the sense that let them take politics out of this whole thing. So take politics out of this whole thing, and if it's going the way that it is going now and causing a whole lot of chaos and causing so much challenges in the system and trying to hit the polity, I think that like they proposed, there should be more consultations. There should be more consultations so that people can have more input, like what they tried to do yesterday, but they did it wrongly. More consultations. Just widen the same way that they want to widen the tax net. Let them widen the consultation net also, so that more people, more tax experts, more people will bring in their input, and then, because the law is made for the people, not the people for the law. So at the end of the day, no matter how you want to, as a government, you want to achieve your aim of 18 to 20% tax to GDP ratio by 2026 or so, no matter how you want to do it, you can't do it at the detriment of the lives of people. Because right now, currently, like I've always said, is if you are doing something, if you are implementing your policy as a government, Let justice be seen to be done. Not you just doing justice. Let justice be seen to be done. Equity, extremely important in governance. Now, so I will prefer a situation where they will still withdraw the bill. The executive will still withdraw the bill, and then have wider consultations, and then get a lot of expert views, expert opinions, and then knock out some things. And if these particular areas of Section 77 and 146 are going to cause problems, ultimately at the end of the day, find a way to expunge them. So don't throw the entire bill away, but just find a way to expunge those areas, those sections that you feel are causing a whole lot of troubles, and then move on. Because, like I said, if you take your time to read that bill very well, you will realize that there are a whole lot of goodies in that bill. Because the efficiency has always been a problem, and then a lot of people being outside the tax net has always been the problem. And then if it continues that way, you may not be able to meet your target as a government to upping your GDP, tax to GDP ratio at the end of the day. So they shouldn't throw it away, but just widen your consultation net and then see how you can. If ultimately it's going to cause more problems, find a way to expunge those, just technically delete them, and then represent the bill. The executive represent the bill and see how, because as at yesterday, after the entire rowdy sessions, by the time those people were let in and they spoke, Taiwo spoke, the other persons came and spoke. By the time they finished talking, I realized that most of us, some of the legislators, started having a change of mind. I realized that they started having a change of mind on the bill. Even the ones from the north started having a change of mind on the bill. You know? So that's how to go about it, gently and gently and gently and gently, and not foisting it on the people because it came from your committee as the executive. It must stand. It must not stand. Because at the end of the day, you are there for the people. These governors are connected, no matter how you look at it. These governors are connected to the legislators. Every governor is overseeing a state, a particular state. And every House of Rep member comes from a federal constituency. Every senator comes from a senatorial district. So no matter how you look at it, they're all interconnected, working for a common cause at the end of the day. The people is the common cause. So if the president looks at it and sees it and discover that this thing is for the people, not just me as the president trying to raise funds through fiscal means for my government, to fund my government, not just that, the people also should be considered in terms of their opinion, because I'm there for them. So in terms of their opinion, in terms of how they look at things, and then so looking at it through the prism of the National Assembly, just technically withdraw the bill. Look at those gray areas that are causing tensions in the country, because there's a lot of tension in the north already. We don't want to add more tension. Just look at those gray areas and then expunge them. And the other entire areas that are good, so many areas that are good in that bill, and then represent the bill and see how to take it off from there.
Well, Mr. Daniel Ochefu believes that wider considerations and deliberations be given to the bills because, in his words, he said there are a lot of goodies in the bills. Now, the bill has 4 dimensions to it, and we'll look at some of these dimensions in a bit. But let's see if we can remind you about the outrage, some drama that happened on the floor of the Red Chambers yesterday. Now, the situation was that they saw the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, led by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, accompanied by the Federal Inland Revenue boss, Zach Adedeji, looking to gain access into the Red Chambers. Now, the Senate leader, Senator Okpeyemi Bamidele, had moved a motion to set aside the Senate's rule to allow for them to come in. But Senator Abdul Ningi, PDP Bauchi Central, raised an objection citing Order 12 that certain individuals in government are not allowed access, as earlier explained and buttressed by Mr. Daniel Ochefu. But that moment was also captured and reported in our news. Let's revisit those highlights this morning before we also look at one of the pertinent points raised by the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Let's watch that, and then we'll come and tell you more about that 60 levies tax collected with little progress shown in that regard.
I read through some of these things and I listened to the leader most appropriately. I don't see anywhere whereby the senators should allow these people to come here and make the kind of interactions they so want. However, committees of the Senate and Appropriation can invite for the interaction of this manner, no, but not the Senate in session. I think our rule does not cover invitation to consultants or any official of government to come and bring the sentence. I so submit.
Try to use the position of the Senate, because the order paper is clear and we have been doing this. I have no problem having them to come here and explain whatever. We have been doing that, but we follow known procedures. And that is, if today this thing has to be taken, you now quickly ask for supplementary order paper that will reflect this. And as you say, this is a very, very important matter. It is not a matter that you just come and tell us after we are doing business of the day. Mr. President, you can have your way, but I will have my say. You can use the gavel, and I will use my voice. This thing is very sensitive. Our people have been dominated by this matter. When you say it's matter of urgent national importance, yes, we do have matters of urgent national importance. But even those matters normally is referred to the next legislative date or another legislative date. Please, I beg you in the name of God, this matter is very, very important to not only us, but Nigerians that we represent.
Now, the importance of the matter, in the words of Senator Alin Dume Borno North, he says it's not just important to the House, but to Nigerians as a whole, much reiterated by Mr. Daniel Ochefu. But now, this issue passed, and the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, as chaired by Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, was granted access. Now, in making their presentations and explanations, he queried Nigeria's tax system, citing that over 60 levies and tax are collected, but yet there is little progress to show for it. Now, strong words like that coming from the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, who has been by the president empowered to carry out these reforms, has highlighted this misgiving that has been ongoing for a while.
Yeah.
Now, in highlighting this point, there's also the need to change the nomenclature of the FIRS to embody the interests of the Nigerian people. Do you see a sincerity in purpose coming from the chairman of the Presidential Steering Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms?
Yes, I think so, because changing the nomenclature, like you said, from FIRS in this proposed bill to, I think, Nigeria Revenue Service, you know, whereby the Nigeria Revenue Service will start collecting royalties, you know, hitherto collected by other agencies before. You know, I feel that he actually stated the problem the way it is. Because, like I said earlier, the challenge is not about the quantum of tax, the quantity of the tax, but the perception of the people and their daily experiences with the government over time. So you go abroad, you go out, you go to Europe, you go to America, and you see that the taxes they collect, the taxes the government collect at source or from whatever means, they are fully deployed in the interest of the people. So the people see exactly what they are paying these taxes for. But come down here, back home, you realize that we have this
There's a trust deficit
that people are so paranoid about paying taxes because they feel that it doesn't do anything for them. So part of the 60 whatever that he mentioned is due to inefficiency, number one, in the entire system. And that is why, like I said, this bill has come to reform that system. That system, actually, no matter how we look at it, that system needs to be reformed.
Some of those reforms now include the proposal that an ombudsman to oversee the activities of the soon-to-be renamed FIRS.
Yes.
Because they cannot checkmate their own activities.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, so at the end of the day, you have a streamlined process or method of collecting these taxes, which makes for more efficiency, especially for the corporate income tax, the corporate world. They've always had issues on, I think most times, they used to have up to 4 or 5 different taxes and levies and development levies that they pay. You know, but with this new bill now, it's going to streamline them to at most 2. One tax, one company income tax, and then one development levy that they are going to be paying at the end of the day. So that helps them, apart from the fact that you are bringing down, this bill also seeks to bring down their percentage of payment, which was about 33 point something before, now to about 25% or 27%, 25% income tax, corporate income tax, and then 2% development levy, 27% altogether. So maximum 27, minimum 25 for them now. That will encourage them to pay more. That's the difference, about 8%, 8.5% or so. It's huge. For a company, for an oil company, for instance, that makes turnover or makes profit in trillions or in hundreds of billions, 8.5% is a huge departure for them. You know, so apart from that, now if you look at it that way, you realize that these people are more motivated to pay their taxes more now, and then even the other people, the other grassroots, apart from the less than 1 million threshold that they are saying that they are completely exempted from the system. Apart from that, the other category of people from 1.5 million upwards, you know, and all that are within the tax net also for personal income tax, they will also be happy to pay this. So at the end of the day, you would have been able to streamline the payment processes for more efficiency. And like I said, the money that comes through taxes. Now we saw recently where the central bank, the Minister of Finance mentioned recently that Wale Edum said that he was giving his own presentation where he mentioned that was it him or the FIRS man mentioned that they have already exceeded their
targets for the year.
Also, Mele Kyari for NNPC also said they have exceeded their target for the year.
The Nigerian Customs Service as well.
The Nigerian Customs Service have exceeded their target for the year. So this money does not largely come from these other peanuts that workers get and all these little businesses. It comes majorly from the corporate world. These taxes come majorly from the corporate world because there are procedures in place for them that you must pay at the end of the day, going by the kind of services you render, the kind of things that you do. You know, so it comes majorly from them. So if it comes majorly from them, at the end of the day, with this reform now, you realize that they are more prompted, they are more encouraged and more engineered to pay these taxes, knowing fully well that this plenty 60, that
levies and whatnot,
levies and all that have been streamlined to one process, through one process that they can easily pay without any, because a lot of times you have different agencies coming up with different, with multiple
taxations
for them, and they have to comply, because for some of them they even go to the extent of wanting to threaten their existence as a corporate organization in the country over time. So you realize that by the time they do what he has said now, by this law, it will streamline, and there'll be more efficiency. In my own estimation, there'll be more efficiency, and you have more people willingly, whether by coercion or by government policy or whatever, willingly, because this is the only way that they can achieve their target of this GDP, of tax to GDP ratio, which they are banking on
to fund the budget.
So they should be able to do everything possible. I agree perfectly with what he said. They should be able to do everything possible to make sure that there are no leakages from the tax net, because already we don't have much coverage for the tax net already. So there are no leakages, and then this bill has also come to block every possible leakages to those tax net already.
Now, moving on to more legislative interventions as captured by the news this morning would rest the tax reform bills, but pick up on another sensitive issue that has sadly claimed the lives of thousands of road users in the South. Now, following the deplorable condition of the Odupani-Calabar Highway, a major federal road linking two states in the South, Cross River and the Akwa Ibom states, part of the deliberations on the floor of the Senate saw summons issued to the Minister of Work, Engineer David Umwahi, to Julius Berger, and to CEECC over the state of the road. Now, whilst there might not be compensations for those who do not have life insurance or vehicle insurance, who have lost either life or property in the course of plying that road, how important is it that there is a legislative intervention, which many consider long overdue, on the state of the Odupani-Calabar Highway?
I think it's actually extremely important now that the National Assembly intervenes in that also, such that I know there's a representative member from there, and then there's a senator from there, but I think that road is actually extremely important economically, such that they should intervene to be able to see how we can't afford to have channels of tension in this country anymore. We can't afford to have channels of tension anymore. Things that we are supposed to do as a people, as a nation, if we neglect them, they are recipe for tension. They are recipe for, and then for some of them, they're even counterproductive to our economic pursuits as a nation, economic policies and all that as a nation. So apart from this road, there are other roads that...
The East-West Road.
The East-West Road. And then there are some other roads that are so economically important. There are several of them.
Now, Mr. Daniel, the thing is not even about the economic importance. My concern over time is that monies are also approved.
Yes.
Monies are also processed, and some contractors have received more than 50% of this monies.
Yeah.
But when you take an assessment, like you said, there are members in the legislative arms of government who are from these communities. Even the Senate president is from Akwa Ibom State, which this road links to.
That's right.
Most times, this probe do not yield results as to who should be held culpable for the deplorable state of the road, for even sometimes the outright non-construction or even commencement of construction on these road projects. Do you think that there would be a deviation from this tradition following the latest summons as issued by the Senate?
And that has always been our problem as a nation, because, like I said some time ago, I said it's not about just bringing out figure. Budgets are just estimate figures. So what gives life to a budget is your action and inaction as a government. That's what gives life to every budget. Your action or inaction as a government. So having budgets for these roads, and not just this road, the budget life entirely. How do we follow through these budgets? How do we follow the releases to these agencies? How do we follow the releases? How do we follow the Public Procurement Act? How do we follow them to the letter? How do we ensure that contractors, once mobilized, they are held accountable for what they are supposed to do? Because by not doing that, which becomes our inaction, by not doing that, a lot of economic losses to the country. There are a lot of issues that are being raised. People die on these roads, not just this particular road. There are other roads. So if you don't do what you're supposed to do as a government, people die on these roads. And then, of course, most of them don't apply these roads. So, so when you say things like this, it really doesn't make sense to them. When you say things like this, especially for roads and all that, it doesn't make sense to them. Some of them just want to be politically correct by coming up with, just wanting to front for things like this. But in the real sense, the people that you are leading, the people that you are overseeing, if their lives are not important to you, it then means that you have no business wanting to follow up on what you have appropriated for. Because at the end of the day, if you appropriate for a particular road and it's not done, you go to ask questions. It doesn't just stop at calling the contractors, calling the ministry and agencies, the supervising agencies for those contracts, for those contracts. It's not just for those agencies. It's not just calling them to House or Senate committee on their agencies, supervising their agencies, to just shout on them on television, and then at the end of the day, nothing happens. We as a country, we have this character of backing and just backing. The purpose why you have a dog in a house is not just to bark, it's to bite. And not just biting people, but biting the certain kind of people that you wouldn't want in the house. It's only in Nigeria, it's only abroad or America or Europe and all that they have dogs in their houses for fancy. Because they like them. They like to keep them as pet. In Nigeria, we don't have them because we like them. And
it's a sense of security.
It's a sense of security.
To curb against corruption and intruders.
And all that. So you have agencies like ICPC, like EFCC, like all that, and you have them around who are watchdogs, who are supposed to be watchdogs for these agencies in terms of contract award. Now you have the Public Procurement Act. If you my brother, you need to see the whole lot of corruption going on in that system. Even with the act. So, but points come that they just throw the act to one side and then do whatever they want to do. So a lot of kickbacks in those contracts affect the cost of the contract at the end of the day, and then the contractor knows that he doesn't need to follow through to execute the contract before getting his money once kickbacks are settled. And so at the end of the day, you discover that a contract that is supposed to, for instance, 80% of fund has been released for those contracts. You realize that the contract is still at the stage of 15% completion. So it impacts on us as a people. We make these laws, and then we don't put mechanisms in place to follow through these laws to make sure that once 1 naira is released, if we follow through the process of the Public Procurement Act, once 1 naira is released, we follow through to ensure that what it is released for, it is done. So that is where the problem is. Not apart from this road, there are other areas, there are other roads that are so critical, as critical infrastructure in Nigeria, but because of how we operate as a government, as a people, we just see them as, okay, it's just a routine. That every year, okay, you come, have your MTF, have your FSP, have all that, budget comes, you roll them out, and then it continues like that. That is why you see at the end of the day also that you still see some particular item in a budget for like 3 years consecutively. A particular item in the budget for like 3 years consecutively, because nobody looks at them critically, nobody looks at them holistically, nobody looks at them forensically to know that okay, this was there last year. It's not supposed to be here this year. I give you an instance. The road from, I think, Lafia to Enugu or so. Lafia to Enugu, from Benue to Enugu. There's a particular road that has been on the budget, or was on the budget for several years before I think the Buhari administration started it in earnest. Fashola also started it in earnest. You know, so it happens like that in every sector. So apart from this road, apart from this particular road, we need to, as a government, we need to follow through. When budget estimates are released, we need to follow through to make sure that these monies, wherever they are going to, our eyes, our eagle eyes, are on them. And then until we do that, we're not going to make any headway.
Well, it is indeed on the accountability quotient in deliverables as demanded by Nigerians. Whilst government has been put in place to provide basic social amenity to Nigerians, the deplorable state of the Calabar-Odupani Highway has occasioned another summon for the Minister of Works, Julius Berger, CEECC. And now moving to other legislative matters in the news, away from the Senate, the House of Representatives yesterday also approved the MTEF for 2025 to 2027. But amidst this approval, another pertinent issue was highlighted. It's in a financial system where our banks have jettisoned automated teller machines, which are now largely empty. There's no cash in them. But there is a thriving POS operation in Nigeria. Now, yesterday, the House of Reps has now also resorted to issue summons to the CBN governor and bank CEOs to probe this POS issue. I don't know if you find this commendable or what you make of this culture in Nigeria now where ATMs are becoming more like museums. People only just have them to reference them that this is what an ATM looks like. They are non-functional. Meanwhile, POS operators are thriving, and it's not also being linked to an increase in fraudulent activities in the financial sector.
Yeah, because the reason is just simple. We have to be truthful to ourselves as a people. Is the fact that most of these POS are owned by, or most of these, not POS essentially, most of these, this other pseudo banking outlets, like Money Points and all these other ones, they are actually owned by some of these core bankers, you know, directors of banks and all that. You know, so from there, you will know that if they own most of these service points, you realize that the efficiency of the banking service will begin to drop from there. And then it boils down, it cascades down to the POS business, where you have, for whatever reason, for what I saw, the CBN governor came out recently, within the week or so, and he was saying that, okay, during the MPC, after the MPC, during the briefing, when he was saying that they were going to do everything possible, they were working with the banks to do everything possible to ensure that there's cash in the system, you know, and then so you begin to ask a lot of questions, because most of this, if you go to some of these nations like China and all that, where you have a very thriving informal sector. If you come to Nigeria, for instance, most of these market women, they don't believe in transfer. You buy something from them, they don't believe in transfer
because it's petty trade.
Petty trade, and then apart from the fact that if you pay into their account, by the time they want to withdraw to make further payments for further goods, they will be charged. So they wouldn't want to go through all that. And then, of course, you have cases where the
failed transactions.
The scam agents are
Sending fake
fake
alerts.
alerts and all that. So they wouldn't want to hear anything about transactions in the bank. They want physical cash for them. So, and this cash, especially at this time of the year, it happens over the past 3-4 years now. Once it comes to November, December, it just mysteriously becomes scarce. And then, like you rightly said, the POS businesses are thriving. And then, apart from the threshold that they've put in the banks, that the CBN has put in the banks, where you use an ATM for your particular bank, on another bank you can't withdraw more than 40,000, more than 30,000, 20,000, as the case may be. Apart from that, challenge that people have is also the challenge of, okay, you have a lot of failed transactions on your ATM in the bank. Even if you are using your ATM, your bank ATM or your bank machine, failed transactions. So at the end of the day, you still have to transport yourself to go to the bank
to go and lodge a complaint.
To go and lodge a complaint, and then sometimes it takes some days, takes some weeks to resolve those issues, especially when it's interbank, not intrabank. It takes some days or weeks to resolve those issues.
Meanwhile, the CBN had put a law on the time allowed for such delayed transactions.
They're not followed through. That is the problem. They have fixed those times, those particular times, over and over, shifted them, adjusted them over and over, but these people don't follow through them. So, and that is the same thing I keep saying. You know, what you see happening at the head of any organization boils down to the subheads of that particular organization also. So when we have this character or this attitude in government of, at the head, of nonchalancy, of not following up on issues, of not following up on matters, especially when they border on our economic life, it becomes, so that's the same thing that you see from the head, the president, to the National Assembly, and down to the agencies that you have now. So if the central bank governor is not ensuring that there is cash in the system through the banks, if it's not ensuring that, you know, it means it just marks of inefficiency. You know, and like I said, it happens at this particular time of the year, most times when people will need cash.
Now, many also say it's traceable and to the unforgivable sins of the former CBN governor, the cash crunch prior to the 2023 elections. But beyond that, it has now become a tradition whereby Nigerians are resorting to buying their own money. And with this habit of having to pay high withdrawal fees to PS operators, there is the challenge that this thoughts of a cashless policy might not work for all classes of people. And with the middle class fast disappearing, do you think that there should be a redressal for this cashless policy and its intended target?
That's why I gave you the instance of the poor market woman in a local village market in the village somewhere. You know, how do you explain the cashless policy to such a woman whose life depends entirely on, because either ways they see it as, however it goes, I'm still likely to lose. There's risk anyways. If I keep the money, if I keep ₦1 million in my house under my pillow as a market woman, because I want to wake up in the following day 5 a.m. and rush to the market to buy goods, it's risky. If I leave it in the bank, it's still risky.
Because these days, people are also complaining about humongous amounts disappearing, spiritually, would I say, artificially from their banks.
Because you just wake up one day, and then some time ago, I woke up in the morning, I saw a debit of 56,000 from my account, from my bank. 56,000 naira from my account, from my bank. And then the narration was electronic transfer or something over
electronic levy.
Electronic levy over a period of time. I didn't complain. I didn't say anything. I just sat down. 2 days after, I saw a reversal of part of that money. So they auto-corrected themselves. I saw a reversal of part of that money. I think about half of it was gone. and then there's a reversal. The narration was a reversal of whatever for them. So, and this is just me. You can count the number of Nigerians who go through this every day. So that's why I say either way is for the market woman in the village there, it's risky. Putting it in the bank, putting it at home, so for them, but for efficiency for them or for seamless business transactions for them, it's they just feel, okay, I'll better do with the physical cash that I see. Because if I still want to go to buy from where I buy from, they wouldn't accept anything less than cash transaction from me. So this is what keeps my life going. So if you want to ensure that I go cashless policy as the village market woman that I am, it means you are technically taking the food from my table, because this is what I do with. This is what I eat. This is how. So I want to believe that. I think it's not supposed to be something that is cast in stone, because even with what is happening right now, that they are saying that they are trying to withhold cash from the system. Even with that, the CBN governor recently said that there's still over about 3 trillion outside of the banking sector. So in the hands of people. Even with all this that they are doing,
attempts to mop up liquidity,
there's still about over 3 trillion outside of the banking system. So I want to think that no matter how you want to go cashless, or no matter how you want to invoke that policy on the people, there still have to be, you still have to find better ways to, because most of the businesses that grow the economy are not some of these big businesses. They're some of these small informal sector businesses that grow the economy.
And you're right, because the GDP growth we just witnessed, 4.6%, was attributed to the service sector.
To the service sector. So you realize that they have more money to deal with, to do whatever they want to deal with, because of this whole system now in the banking system, and then you can't grow the economy with the services sector. You have to grow the economy with the manufacturing, the real sector.
The production sector.
The production sector. So with these statistics that came out from the NBS recently, you realize that the services sector have about 58% or so. 58 point something percent. Where you have 17% for manufacturing sector, you have for oil sector 5% and all that. So you can't depend on the services sector to grow your economy. Because, and with all this no cash around for people to do what they're supposed to do, you have more money in the banks now for them, to do whatever they want to do. That's why it's growing their own services sector in the bank, because they have the financial muscle to do whatever they want to do. So I still believe that the CBN should find better ways to balance this issue of cash in the hands of people, such that the small scale businesses that still depend on cash, because you can't, the reason why we find ourselves going through all these pains in the country now is because we have somebody who came as the president and felt that we needed to be taken as a nation, to be taken into the theater for an operation without anesthesia.
Now, this is also seen in the decision to float the naira. The exchange rate now, and part of the MTF that was passed, saw the exchange rate pegged at 1,400 naira per dollar.
Yeah.
Is that exchange rate realizable, considering where it is now at the moment?
With the MTF, I don't think it's realizable because of our actions and inactions, like I said. Because, of course, the MTF they are just projections over time for the period of 3 years, on which the budget is based on, and then, so certain things will happen, or there are certain things that we need to do, or we should do as a people, as a country, that will make that realizable. What is the policy direction of the government currently? Positive signs are coming from some parts. The refinery is on board now from the Port Harcourt. That will impact on our foreign exchange. and all that over time, after some time, and all that. So the pressure on the forex may go down, and then also importantly, also the governors, like we hear through grapevine that some of these governors, by the time they receive the huge allocation that comes to them from the windfall from the subsidy windfall, change this money to dollars and then keep them, and then put more pressure on the dollar, on the demand for dollar. So you have few dollars and more people chasing few dollars. So it still goes up like that. So if we start to address some of these things, one after the other, then it may be possible. The $1,400 projection from the NTF may be possible. And then but with other things in the mix, variables in the mix, it may be possible. But if we go the way we are going right now, it's about 1,700 and something right now.
Yes.
If we go the way we are going right now, it may not be feasible. Because at the end of the day, we may just be shooting blank. And then at the end of the day, we may just be firing blank. That's how I see. Like I said, the MTF is still something that is not cast in stone. But then, the things that we do now, or the things that we don't do as a nation, as a people, whether it's economic policies, whether the fiscal monetary policies and all that, the things that we do or don't do will ensure whether that 1,400 is realizable or not.
Well, interesting perspective this morning, and it is not just the thought of Mr. Daniel Ochefu. Even whilst deliberations were had on the floor of the Green Chambers yesterday, certain lawmakers called the MTF for 2025 to 2027 widely optimistic. Now we look at one last issue that was deliberated on the floor of the Green Chambers before we turn our attentions to the coming on board of the Port Harcourt refinery. Also on the floor of the Green Chambers yesterday, the reps moved to summon Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commissions, and it's with the charge that for the replacement of obsolete electricity meters, they need to be done within a specified period. Now the reps has also, by this notice, ordered an investigations into some of the discrepancies that happen within the discos and electricity consumers as it concerns meters. Now, this is coming to me as a surprise because last year in December, the Senate approved over $500 million under the Presidential Metering Initiative for meters to be handed out to Nigerians. Now, I don't know if it's that the funds are not being channeled through the right process, but why are discos still going after electricity consumers despite being barred from doing so under the consumer protection rights to obtain meters? Now, listening to this deliberation yesterday, I was trying to draw the understanding from the approval last year and this investigation ongoing this year. What do you make of this development?
It still boils down to the corruption in that system. Like I keep saying, it's just corruption in that system. That system is one of the, sorry to say, but this is the stark reality. One of the most corrupt systems in Nigeria, or sector in Nigeria. And that is why the issue of metering we had expected that with that presidential directive on metering, we had expected that it would bring a more efficiency to that system. But the way it is right now, there is a whole confusion in that system now, such that you can hardly see where now the leakages in that system, that particular system, is so huge that the more you look, the less you see in that system. That's just the summary for me. The more you look, the less you see in that system when it comes to financial misappropriation and all that. So Nigerians deserve better. In fact, it's appalling to still be thinking that we're mentioning estimated bill, at this time, 2024, this century. It's appalling. They were still mentioning estimated billing. It should be a thing of the past, long time ago. And this is where accountability comes in. Without a metering, you can't have accountability. Because Somebody sits down somewhere and just go up and down with some boys and just give people estimated whatever and all that, and collect money. Some people collect side money, and so the accountability in that system is so porous that I believe that the entire system needs to be rejigged, such that if we have efficiency in the power sector, like somebody jokingly said, I think I mentioned it here some time ago, that that if you have that when God created the world, the first thing he asked to come was power, was light. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
In the creation story.
In the creation story. And the earth was without form and void, and God said, let there be light. And light came. So the first thing that God himself wanted or needed to further his creation, to continue his work, was light. So if we begin to dabble into, if we begin to handle issues of power with levity, the way we are doing currently in Nigeria, there should be a complete overhaul in that system.
Now, this is just only on the angle of distribution, Seth,
Yeah.
even to end consumers.
Yeah.
With the generation, this morning we're also hearing the shocking news that 8.8 billion naira has been spent in revamping 128 vandalized transmission towers across the country. And in that report, the police has also been indicted, saying that they're making light of electricity vandals. Is this another shrouded area? Do you think that genuinely 8.8 billion naira was used in revitalizing these vandalized towers? And what happens to the position of the NSCDC, who is by law empowered to oversee these critical public assets?
We call figures anyhow in this country. We just wake up in the morning, cook up figures, and just call figures. So
8.8 billion naira.
8.8 billion naira. So you wake up in the morning and you just say, so figures are just, statistics are a major problem in this country. You just wake up one morning and you just think, okay, one former governor somewhere stole 300 billion. And then you begin to ask yourself, what's the entire budget for that state over 3 years? So figures are not a problem for us. We just cook them up anyhow. But at the end of the day, even if it was like that, like you said, what's the point having the security and civil defense? Because that is their constitutional mandate. So what's the point having them there? And then so it shows inefficiency on their own part also that need to be questioned. And we can't continue like this. For how long do we continue where we have situations of vandalization under the nose of people who are expected to protect the critical infrastructure that we have in a particular sense? So for me, it doesn't make sense. If figures like that come out, it means there must be investigation. And then not just investigation, people should be made to pay for, at the end of the day, to be made to face the law at the end of the day.
Not in moving forward, because I believe we're spending much time on these issues, but let's see if we can accommodate other issues in the news. Now, about this time last year as well, we're told that the first phase of the Port Harcourt refinery was completed with the gas flaring commencing. And now, just about 365 days later, we hear that the rollout from the Port Harcourt refinery has seen over 120 trucks pick up products from the Port Harcourt refinery. One of our tabloids this morning also captured the president had been elated following such news. He has now charged the NNPCL to ensure that the Warri and Kaduna refineries also come on board. Now, it's not as though that there has not been money spent over the years in turnaround maintenance. Salaries are being paid. But whilst we look to commend the Port Harcourt refinery, there's also the case of marketers now raising their voices. They're saying that they do not expect to lift products at the same price they're lifting from Dangote refinery, being a private company, at the same rates they would lift from the Port Harcourt refinery. I have two questions. Is the Port Harcourt refinery coming on board a much, a much applaudable achievement, or is it long overdue? And secondly, on the part of the price the NNPCL is rolling out, should there be a price disparity?
Well, let me first of all congratulate the President and Commander-in-Chief for the coming on board of the refinery. It's been a long time coming, of the Port Harcourt refinery, even though at 60% capacity, at least, at all, not bad.
In our local parlance.
In our local parlance. At least we can see something. Because I commend him because, and the NNPC GMD, I commend them because over time, monies have been spent in these critical infrastructures and nothing has happened. But they have been able to follow through and given us this at this time. So it's highly commendable. Like I said, it's been a long time coming. The Dangote is there as a businessman. He's there, no matter how you look at it, he's there as a businessman. So people who should compete with him, in my own opinion and estimation, people who should compete with him are people who are in business, who are private business owners also. So when BUA, for instance, comes on board, or other private refineries come on board, whether through foreign investments or local investments and all that, sector players, when they come on board, they're the ones that are supposed to compete with Dangote in the long run, or even in the short run. But for now, Dangote seems to be the price decider for now, because no matter how we look at it, he's still the chief executive officer of the monopoly in that sector right now. So he is the price decider currently as it is right now. Last Friday or so, he reduced 20 naira, and it affected all the pumps within the country, across the country. At least 20 naira was deducted, at least. So, and then the fact that he produces, he churns out at least 28 million liters daily, 25 to 28 million liters daily. And then our 60% capacity for the old refinery for Port Harcourt can do up to 2 million for now. So compared less than 2 million to about 25 to 28 million. So he's still the decider, no matter how you look at it. So he will dictate the price for now. In the long run, when other competitors begin to come on board, other competitors, and like somebody said yesterday that I also accept, if the federal government can give the kind of support they give to Dangote to BUA also to come on board, give him the exact support to come on board as a private investor also. And then others begin to come. By the time others begin to see, you begin to see some foreign investment in that sector. People will begin to bring in their money to invest in refineries, no matter the capacity. And then by the time we have a whole lot of them around, and then added to Warri and the other Port Harcourt also, the new one, or the second one of Port Harcourt, which has about 150 capacity or so barrels per day. You put all those together, Kaduna, I'm not someone who is so fascinated about the Kaduna refinery. I'm not so fascinated about the Kaduna refinery because if you look at all the other refineries, the Kaduna refinery, the refinery infrastructure seems to be the most obsolete. And then look at also the distance from the source of the product. You have to lay a whole lot of pipe to Kaduna again. And if there are pipes already, those pipes, you can imagine how obsolete those pipes will be by now. So it will take much money to bring
it back on board.
To bring the Kaduna refinery back on board. Much money and more time. Warri might not be so much of a problem. The other one for Port Harcourt, the second one in Port Harcourt is already a work in progress currently. So, but the Kaduna, it may take more time. It may take more time. So, by the time all these ones come on board, it will affect the price over time. it will affect the price over time because you have been able to technically or practically knock out marine cost, and all that. So it's just within. So it will knock out the price, but not immediately. Because, like I said, he's the gang leader for now. he's the alpha and the omega for now.
All right, in closing, we'll talk about one more issue in the news and then we'll wrap it up in our analysis of the newspaper headlines and feature stories. Now, following 110 billion naira alleged fraud case is leveled against the former Kogi State Governor, Alhaji Yahaya Bello. He had his day in court yesterday with a FCT High Court ruling on the matter. Now, he's also supposed to have another bail application heard on the 10th of December. But whilst that is the case, he's been officially handed over by Justice Aneni of the Abuja court to the EFCC to be remanded in their custody. He's not alone in this. He also has 1 to 2 defendants named in that suit against him. Now, many talk about no one being above the law, and with all the drama that ensued in the role that the current Kogi State Governor Ododu played, and the back and forth between the EFCC. Many were so surprised to find out that indeed the ex-Kogi Governor can actually be remanded by the EFCC, once it looks as though it was almost impossible. Well, what do you make of this twist in the story?
Well, some people will tell you that our country is a very funny country.
When it comes to matters of the law and the rule of law.
When it comes to matter of the law and the rule of law, there is no country that can thrive in the absence of law.
Because with law comes order.
With law comes order. So, a lot of times I wonder how we survive the kind of oxygen that we use and we breathe on without the law most times, because some persons will just posit that Yahaya Bello, the former governor of Kogi State, technically evaded arrest so that he could buy time and clean up his house.
That's another angle to the conversation.
One angle to it, and then because why would the EFCC want to arrest someone and not be able to arrest the person? Why? I will not be able to arrest the person. I just mentioned to you about having a dog and having it to bite, not to bark. So the EFCC is supposed to be able to bite whenever he wants to bite, and bite hard because he was created to bite.
Especially when there's no more immunity.
Especially when there is no more immunity. So I don't understand why, and that's, for me, this is one of the reasons why the clamor for when the former president Buhari brought the not too young to run bill, the National Assembly, and passed and signed on it and all that, and people were just happy. It doesn't make any difference to me in governance. It didn't make any difference to me, because here's a young man we're talking about, a very young man who was in his less than 40 when he became a governor. And then look at what has happened. The case is still in court. The court will have to take the law will have to take its full course on him at the end of the day. But what message is this sending out to the young ones who would want to see it as, okay, it has to be the youth. It has to be the youth. Not just him. We have a couple of people, some ministers who were just sent off and all that, who are young people with young blood, fresh ideas. What became of them? You have a young man like this, a very young man.
Does it mean they are more susceptible to corruption? Final question in 2 minutes.
No,
young persons in relation to corruption, are they more susceptible? What does this do for the future of young people in leadership?
No, I don't want to believe that corruption is gender sensitive.
Or age sensitive.
Age sensitive rather. I don't want to believe that it's age sensitive. It could be anybody. We've had 80, 70-year-old men in this country who's gone on with corruption, myriads of corruption.
Well,
we have less than that and all that. So it's not, but for me, people should not make it a case of the youth must be in government before we make progress as a country.
Well, a fine place to leave it. I must thank you, Mr. Daniel Ochefu, for your vehement opinions on issues on the news this morning. We appreciate you.